From the heart of America, where hard work, freedom, and faith still define who we are. From the farms to the factories, from small towns to city streets, this is the fight for the soul of our nation.
We're watching Democrats attack democracy. Do not be fooled.
The strength, the grit, the greatness of the American spirit, all right here.
The left wanted power, not peace, but there's a resistance rising. A generation saying enough, enough. We've tried it their way, and it failed.
The Steve Gruber Show with your host, Steve Gruber, starts right now.
All right, let's lean into it. Another big day here as we kick off another 3 hours here of the Steve Gruber Show, fighting for you from the foxhole of freedom. Here are three big things you need to know this Tuesday. Number one, March Madness is over. The kings of college basketball have been crowned, and for UConn and Michigan, it was the center of the world, but Michigan walks away on top, first time since 1989. Number two, despite high oil prices, the economy continues to get stronger. Jobs numbers are good. Employment is going down. Inflation has improved, but energy is still the wild card. And number three, look, I am tired of the left wing's anti-American, anti-conservative, anti-common sense, anti-Trump cheerleading section. Aren't you? Doesn't it? I mean, how much focus does it take to wake up that angry every single day? How much? Look at some of these clowns on TV. They're openly rooting for Iran against the pilots that went down and were ultimately rescued there. They're rooting for America to lose so they can blame Trump for anything that goes wrong. That's how demented they are. Before the rescue over the weekend, commentator David Brooks was itching to tear down President Trump and America and claimed that we're losing this war because we lost a plane. So, I mean, again, how demented they are. Listen.
Iran is a serious country that's been preparing for this for nearly half a century, and they're going to fight back, and they're going to make counter moves like this or like the Straits of Hormuz. To me, what happened, you know, I've been somewhat moderately hoping there'd be some positive outcome, and I think there has been some. We've had to go to the Middle East for almost every decade for the last 50 years because of radical Islam, which the Iranian regime typifies. But this is clearly the week when the costs of the war are so exponentially larger than the benefits of what we're getting in these marginal weeks. The cost to Russia is now getting all this revenue. Iran is getting all this revenue. The European economy and the world economies are in crisis. NATO is in shreds. And so the costs are just exorbitant now, not to mention the human suffering. And so if Trump doesn't see that we're losing, every day he continues this thing, he's going to just face more and more political problems, military problems, and all sorts of problems. And
losing. We're dominating the war, of course. The people that are losing are those that refuse to lend a hand to supply their own energy needs through the Strait of Hormuz, that being France, Germany, the UK, all the rest. It's a sick and awful mindset, and thank God our pilots were rescued with no loss of life. These guys were cheering for that to go the other way so they could hang that on Donald Trump as well. This operation should pump up each and every American with an extra dose of patriotism, because only our military, under the fearless leadership of Donald Trump, could have pulled any of this off. It's a remarkable accomplishment. First of all, I just think it's worth noting that the pilot went down on Good Friday, was then rescued on Easter Sunday after hiding in a crevice in a mountainside of rock all day Saturday. You don't get more symbolic than that. And to top it off, the airman was extremely religious. His first message sent out after being rescued was, God is good. Amazing. Here's President Trump with more on that mission. Listen.
Despite the peril, the officer followed his training and climbed into the treacherous mountain terrain and started climbing toward a higher altitude, something they were trained to do in order to evade capture. They want to always go as far away from the site of the shoot down. You want to go as far away because they all head right to that site. You want to be as far away as you can. And he was injured, and he was an amazing, amazing thing. He scaled cliff faces, bleeding rather profusely, treated his own wounds, and contacted American forces to transmit his location. We immediately mobilized a massive operation to retrieve him from the mountain holdout, and he kept going higher and higher. The mountain kept getting rougher and rougher, and really very, very hard to find. The second rescue mission involved 155 aircraft, including 4 bombers, 64 fighters, 48 refueling tankers, 13 rescue aircraft, and more.
Yeah. Separated from his brothers in arms by miles and miles, hundreds of IRGC soldiers crawling over the entire mountain. They even put a bounty on his head, we're told $60,000. They still couldn't find him. The CIA actually initiated an effective deception campaign to confuse Iranian forces and convince them that the airman had already been rescued and was being transported out of the country by a ground convoy just to throw them off the scent. And it worked. Only our U.S. military was able to find these guys, both of them, one quickly and one after a couple of days, and then literally set up an airfield deep inside Iranian military territory to get them out. There was even a hiccup. 2 transport planes were supposed to carry the commandos, and the airmen got stuck. We threw in 3 new planes to get all our guys out, then blew up the ones that got stuck so the IRGC didn't get their hands on our equipment, a concept never conceived of by Joe Biden and his administration. Oh, blow that stuff up before we leave. Recovering those pilots wasn't even the only thing we accomplished. At the same time, CENTCOM Commander Brad Cooper ordered a B-2 bomber strike on the headquarters, underground headquarters, of the IRGC. IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, their central command was literally obliterated while they rescued our airmen. Kind of shows like the 1-2 punch. Over here, we're getting the airmen out. Over here, we're destroying and decapitating your military again. For CENTCOM Commander, retired General Frank McKenzie says even he would have been scared to carry out this mission. He sees it as a complete and utter success. Here it is.
And, you know, we did, in fact, lose a couple of aircraft in that mission. But I would just tell you, it takes a year to build an aircraft. It takes 200 years to build a military tradition where you don't leave anybody behind. You take the aircraft trade any day in a situation like this. The other lesson, I think, is a hard lesson for Iran. First of all, they were not able to find the missing air crewman. Second, you know, they put out a broad appeal to their people to turn them in, reward, asking for all kinds of leads. That does not appear to have been successful. And that would, I think that's maybe a sign of disaffection.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of complaining about planes we lost in Iran from the same people who had nothing to say about the $7 billion worth of gear that was left behind in a reckless, haphazard departure from Afghanistan that also left 13 military members dead on one day. The same people who had nothing to say about the billions of dollars that were stolen in Minnesota as a result of fraud from illegal aliens. To put it in perspective, our losses in this mission represent about 1/20th of what has been stolen in Minnesota. 1/20th. Do the math. Democrats still trying to distract about all of their terrible policies and terrible failures, while the United States military registers one heroic victory after another. We'll have more on this coming up. Glad to see you. Send me an email if you'd like, stevegruber.com. You can send me a note, Ivy a note, both of us a note, however you'd like it to go. Good to see you on a Tuesday. I'll be right back. All right, now Democrats still trying to distract with the complaints about Trump's rhetoric. Instead of praising his leadership for the recovery of these pilots, which should be first and foremost, the complexity of this mission, the ability to pinpoint a pilot in enemy territory while they're swarming the ground. And we get people in and get people out. Here's Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat, of course. Listen.
Kristen, this is why the president and Secretary Hegseth's rhetoric about no mercy, no quarter, death from above, bomb you to the Stone Ages, this kind of rhetoric is really dangerous because the likelihood of having downed pilots or others who are captured in a war like this is very high. And if you send the message that there's no quarter for the folks on the other side, that really encourages them to mistreat our folks. And so I hope the White House, I doubt the president will, but please dial back the rhetoric because you don't need to put people like these pilots more at risk by the rhetoric that you used.
You know, imbecile, you're right. We should talk, hey, Iran, you know, if we can just get along, you want a teddy bear, we can just hang out, be besties. Come on. Who are these fools? There's another point that General McKenzie made there. The Iranian people didn't seem too eager to help find these pilots. No wonder they don't want to help out the regime that has enslaved them for the last several decades. They didn't care about rhetoric. They just hung them from cranes outside the prison or shot them. People like championship wrestlers or anybody who dared speak out about the regime. You're right, Senator Kaine. We should talk nice. We should, send love notes. Give me a break. Trump had to push back against PBS reporters on the White House this week as well, remind them that the Iranian people want the U.S. to take on the regime, and they've wanted it for 47 years. From yesterday.
45-day ceasefire. Do you like that? How is it taking care of the Iranian people if you're bombing?
Yeah, who you with? Who you with?
PBS.
Well, that's a radical left group of lunatics that you're with. Let me just tell you, very fair question. The Iranian people, when they don't hear bombs go off, they're upset. They want to hear bombs because they want to be free. And the only reason they're not out protesting, you know that, is because they were informed that if they protest, like the wrestler and his friends, if they protest, they will be shot immediately.
Or strung up by a crane and hung outside the prison for all to see. These clowns are always trying to impeach Trump. Now they're trying to accuse him of war crimes, by the way. Here's a tweet from Senator Jeff Merkley. I think he's from that lovely state of Oregon, calling Trump's threats against Iran's power plants, quote, the words of a frustrated and immoral madman. No, you're a frustrated and immoral little weasel, Merkley. He claims, quote, many experts agree that such attacks would be war crimes under international law. What experts? Then he goes to tell our military leaders that they're legally required to refuse orders to commit war crimes. Here we go again. The Democrats telling people when they can, make a decision. Sounds like sedition to me, not to mention entirely false. International law, here it is in my hand, by the way, clearly states that military objectives can include objects like power grids, if that power grid is contributing to the enemy military action. Same thing about water supplies and bridges. It's all here under Additional Protocol 1, Article 52 of the Geneva Convention. If people can actually read something and understand these are not war crimes, if the power grid, the water supply, the food supply, the bridges all supply the military enemy, then taking out those bits of infrastructure, in part or in whole, are not war crimes, period. So the legality of these strikes hinges on facts, intelligence, and execution, and these blanket accusations like Senator Merkley's, they don't care. They just hate Trump. They don't care what the law or the rules are. Trump isn't apologizing for it either, that's for sure. Listen.
President, how would it not be a war crime to strike Iran's bridges and power plants?
Because they killed 45,000 people in the last month, more than that. I think it could be as much as 60. They kill protesters, they're animals. and we have to stop them, and we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. Very simple. They want a nuclear weapon. They've been trying for a long time. I stopped them with the Obama horrible Iran nuclear deal. I stopped them in a lot of different ways. We got rid of Soleimani, the evil genius. He was an evil genius. We got rid of him. And then we stopped him with the B-2 bombers.
Yeah, Merkley and his like are so hateful of Trump that they root for Iranian dictators to win. Here's another congressman claiming that Trump is losing to Iran. It's remarkable. Listen to this.
Do you doubt that we will get the Strait reopened, or that we have the ability to?
Yes, I do. And as always with this president, it's, you know, it's all hat, no cattle, right? I mean, he's blustering, he's threatening, and yet he always backs down. And the reason is because he misunderstands the nature of grand strategy.
I can't. He always backs down. Yeah, all hat and no cattle? Tell that to the Iranian Air Force. Oh, wait, they don't have one. Tell the Iranian Navy. Oh, wait, they don't have one of those either. All hat and no cattle. These people are reprehensible. This is the president doing what needs to be done to protect this country. Right? Iran's latest proposals for peace, not good enough, not even close, but they're a step in the right direction. And the mullahs only took it because American power just slapped them across the face. Our pilots are home, their underground command center is rubble, and the regime is blinking. While Democrats scream about rhetoric and war crimes, Donald Trump delivers the only thing that matters, victory. No pilots left behind, no billions abandoned, no weakness. Just fearless leadership that rescues our own, punishes our enemies, and forces the world's worst actors to the table. This is what real strength looks like. The left can keep rooting for Iran. Patriotic Americans like me will root for America under Donald Trump, right? That's where it is. We will root for Donald Trump. We'll take a break. You can always send me an email, stevegruber.com. Love to see what you have to say. All right? Join me here on the program. We read those from time to time. I'll take a break and be right back. All right, welcome back. Glad to have you here for the conversation as we look at so many different facets of what's going on in America today. We're going to look at the economy coming up with Grover Norquist here. It's tax day almost. How are you sitting with taxes? We'll get to that. But with the economy in mind, I wanted to share this story with you because I found this both fascinating and frightening at the same time. The headline is Mexico advances plans to eliminate cash. Mandate digital ID, which is something I think that's been in the plans for this country for a long time as well. Look, it's an easy thing to sell. Look, we get rid of that cash. You won't have drug dealers on the corner because there'll be no cash to be had. It'll all be digital. Can't commit crimes. You know, the old lady down the street, they're not going to steal her purse and mug her because there's no cash to be had. So they'll sell it under the guise of it's good for crime. We'll get rid of crime. We'll get rid of cash. The drug dealers will be gone. The muggers will be gone. You won't have holdups at the liquor store because nobody's going to have any money to steal. Well, we'll see. But In Mexico, they're moving forward with that. It frightens me. Claudia Sheinbaum, the most corrupt president in Mexico in a while, actually, according to some people I talked to, said she's more corrupt than the rest. And that's saying something. You can decide for yourself. Here's something for you. Did you know that over 90% of Americans don't get enough essential vitamins and minerals from food alone? And some research suggests natural vitamins might be superior to synthetic ones. Longevity is an excellent source of over 20 natural vitamins and minerals from real food sources, not synthetic. This is real food. Spinach, kale, all these things in here. Longevity, a complete nutritional support that gives you everything you need to age well. They use it in this house. They do. My son, my daughter, my wife, and yes, sometimes even me. LongevityWellness.co. Enter the promo code Gruber at checkout for a special discount. LongevityWellness.co. If you're in sports and you need a chance to get really powered up, Longevity Wellness. If you're older and you want to make sure you're not losing calories, Longevity Wellness. If you want to take care of your muscle and bone because you're on a weight loss program, LongevityWellness.co. Enter the promo code Gruber at checkout. You'll save money today. LongevityWellness.co. When we come back, Grover Norquist will be here. It's almost tax day. How are we doing in that regard? We'll talk about it coming up. All right, so I look at the jobs numbers, and we're at 178,000. It was supposed to be 60,000. So that's quite a remarkable turn of events. triple the numbers. And if not for oil, look, oil's at $111 a barrel this morning. Surprisingly high, especially when I don't think there's a justification for it. Joining me now is Grover Norquist, Americans for Tax Reform president. And the other thing that's going on, Grover, good morning. With all these increases in expenses, and I think I heard you talking there in the break, look, people are leaving New York. Here's Mamdani saying, well, we're just going to tax the rich, which never works that way. California has had an exodus. Los Angeles, the only city with a net loss of people, 50,000 people over the last year, right? I mean, it's a big deal, right?
It is. Look, jobs are moving into those states that have lower taxes. There are 8 of the 50 states have no personal income tax. And 16 of those 50 states have a flat rate tax, 2%, 3%, meaning everybody pays the same amount. And they take envy off the table when it comes time to discuss taxes. South Carolina just became the 25th state. They signed a bill. They'll be going to 1.99, flat rate tax of 1.99. That'll be the 25th state that has a single rate tax. And with that, I think we can even begin to look at the national level at going to a single rate tax, treating everybody the same, getting out of this business of a graduated or progressive income tax. Karl Marx had 10 things he wanted to do to set up a communist state. One of them was a graduated income tax.
And that's funny, Grover. There was a move afoot, I'm not sure where it is today, to put a graduated progressive income tax on the ballot for Michigan. As if we haven't made enough mistakes here in this ever more blue state about how we're doing things. I mean, look, people are fleeing to Tennessee and Texas and Florida and elsewhere because they have better tax policy, more money in your pocket, more return on your, if you will, your investment as a taxpayer for services. I mean, there's a reason people are fleeing L.A. Nothing works there. They keep spending more and more money on homeless. They have more and more homeless. None of this stuff works, does it?
Well, and the damage to New York, California, and the other blue states is not just what we see the people who leave. It's what we don't see. The kid with $1 billion idea and a dream in Ohio 20 years ago moved to San Francisco to be with the venture capitalists, to be where things were happening. The person who wanted to be a big banker moved to New York. You now, if you have $1 billion idea, the last state you want to be in is the one that's going to not only have very high taxes on what you earn, but then when you accumulate ownership of a business, they're going to come in and steal a piece of it, have a wealth tax. So there's what you see, people leaving California and New York, some of the big Chicago, and the people who young people used to go to New York, used to go to California. Now, not so much.
No, now they're going to Nashville and Jacksonville and other places. Look, do the states that have these exodus issues going on, do they not realize, because one of the things about having states, Grover, was you could see what other states are doing and say, well, wow, that really is working well. Mississippi, for example, has climbed way up the charts in education. Everybody's talked about it, the Mississippi Miracle. Michigan, where I live, has fallen to 44th. When I was born, Michigan was one of the wealthy states. Now we've fallen way down to the bottom quarter. I mean, do people not compare and contrast? This works, and so let's try best practices. It's just like they're oblivious to all this failure. I mean, look at Chicago. Look at L.A. It's like they have their blinders on. It truly is insane.
The country as a whole thrives because of federalism, because 50 states do different things. How did we get concealed carry in 45 states so that people could protect themselves? Because 1 or 2 states started it. They became safer, not more dangerous. Everything that the left said turned out not to be true. And those went state by state. Why do 14 states now have school choice with education savings accounts? Because people watched the first several of them thrive and do well, and everything that was supposed to go wrong didn't go wrong. We've been working to get states to go to a flat rate tax and then to zero. North Carolina was the first one to get going about 13 years ago. Now you have 12 states where the Republican governor or the Republican legislature said, we are going to zero. and 5 of them have passed a law that will automatically take them to zero, put a limit on spending. When revenue comes up above that spending level, they reduce the income tax until the income tax goes to zero. And more states are doing that because they watched the early adapters survive. Bad ideas, government-run healthcare, they passed that in Vermont, like single payer, and then they repealed it in Vermont because it didn't work. The 2 Democratic senators from Vermont, Bernie Sanders and the other guy, they still want to impose in the nation on healthcare that which they saw fail in Vermont.
Right, so it's not about health care then, is it, Grover? It's about something else altogether. It's not about health care. It's about power and control. Look, as you look at the tax day coming here in a couple of days, and you look at what's happening in America, you look at the jobs numbers, you look at energy, whatever it may be, are you optimistic? I mean, some places are obviously getting it. Tennessee gets it. Indiana gets it. Florida gets it. South Carolina that you just mentioned. Big influx of people. South Carolina's on the receiving end of a huge influx of new people, right? So some people get it.
They just started their drive down to zero for the income tax, which is extremely helpful. Georgia went to a flat rate tax. It's committed to go down to zero. West Virginia is on a path to zero. So is Kentucky. So is Mississippi. So is Oklahoma. They've passed the laws to get to zero as the economy grows. So we're going to see more and more movement from blue states to red states. In 5 years, another 10 electoral college votes, another 10 congressional districts when they do redistricting and the census will move to red states from blue states. That's 5 years from now. In another 10 years, another 12 states are going to move from blue states to red states as a larger part of the population lives in the more successful, well-governed states. This changes the electorate, will mean that the House of Representatives 5 years from now, 10 years from now, will be increasingly Republican. Whatever happens in this election in November, we know what will happen 5 years out and 10 years out as more and more electoral college votes. It's going to be hard to elect a Democrat president with the electoral college votes moving to the competent states.
Well, let's just hope the Republicans are actually conservatives and not just, another version of something weak-willed. Yeah, you look at what happens. They want Ron DeSantis, not Abigail Spanberger. That's a fact of what people want, and Spanberger's become wildly unpopular already. Grover, I got to leave it there for today. Good stuff as always. Thank you, sir. Spanberger, wildly unpopular in Virginia already because her policies, 50 new taxes on washing your dog, walking your dog, fixing your car, fixing your house. I mean, they can think of a new tax for just about everything. And it's not on the wealthy now, is it? No, it's not. I'll take a break and be right back.
It was presented
Here is an interesting headline and a big shift for the United States military that I want to share with you. The military has been working to cut ties with Ivy League schools. And the reason being these Ivy League schools and their ideology and their DEI and their wokeness and so forth does not sit well with Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, right? So he's discontinuing relationships with Harvard and Dartmouth and Yale and whoever else, right? So where do you go? They went to Hillsdale College, telling War Secretary Pete Hegseth it would be honored to help educate senior U.S. military officers, aligning itself with the administration's push to cut ties with woke schools with concerns over ideological influence. The letter coming out at the end of last month, the Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn thanked the Department of War for including the school among institutions selected for senior service college fellowship programs, which sends senior military officers to civilian universities for advanced education as they prepare for top leadership roles. The Department of War would end partnerships with several elite universities, including Harvard and Princeton, arguing that woke ideology had weakened military education. I agree. A February memorandum shows the Department of War canceled 93 fellowship positions across 22 different institutions. This is a reset. How do you root out this leftist mentality? Well, first you have to root out the leftist propaganda. And so Hillsdale College in southern Michigan, a conservative institution of higher learning, they only have about 1,600 incoming freshmen every year, so it's not a big place. It's the toughest school in Michigan to get into. Tougher than the University of Michigan or anywhere else because there's only 1,600 seats to begin with. It's incredibly competitive to get into one of those seats. Pete Hegseth says, we train warriors, not wokesters. Hegseth is a graduate of Princeton, by the way. Later earned a degree from Harvard's University, from the Kennedy School there. Not impressed. In their place, the Pentagon steering officers toward a new set of schools. Hillsdale, Liberty University, George Mason University, Pepperdine, Baylor, along with large public universities such as the University of Florida, Auburn, and the University of North Carolina. The new list also includes senior military colleges such as the Citadel, Virginia Tech, and the Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies in Alaska. It's a complete shift. Nobody's interested in Ivy League propaganda anymore. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. The House Freedom Caucus going after their Senate counterparts for not getting the SAVE Act taken care of. This is also something that's incredibly important. Listen to what's being said here.
The House Freedom Caucus led in passing the Save America Act in the House to require voter ID and citizenship to vote in federal elections. Now it goes to the Senate. You're going to hear the excuse that it needs 60 votes to pass there, but that's not true. Senate rules allow bringing the Save America Act to the floor at any time. If 51 Republicans show up, Democrats would have to filibuster, standing and talking, hour after hour, to block it. As long as Republicans show a backbone and stay united, Democrats will eventually run out of time to talk. Tell your senator to make the Democrats actually debate instead of just giving in to them. The House Freedom Caucus says the Senate should support President Trump and the House in passing this law essential to saving America. The Freedom Caucus Foundation is responsible for this ad.
Yeah, there you go. Do not cave in to these people. Stand up, get the Save America Act done, or get rid of the filibuster. I mean, honestly, this is what America wants. We want this done. By the way, yeah, I find Bill Maher to be interesting when I hear, have conversations like this. Bill Maher is a Democrat, right? He's a left of center guy. But he's not a moron a good part of the time. And he'll call out just the idiocy from the people on the left, and I find it kind of refreshing and entertaining. And that's why I had this bite to share with you. Listen to this.
If we are ever going to get back to the old America, that's got to be the Democrats' part of the bargain. Stop coming up with radically new and often terrible ideas, and then in the next breath insist there be no debate about any of it. That if you don't see it right away and go along, you're bad, stupid, and deplorable. As if you were saying, duh, 2 + 2 = 5. Isn't that obvious? Yeah, it's obvious you can't add. You can't just say shit. Math is racist. Queers for Palestine. Looting is cool. Healthy at any weight. If the men's football team played the women's team, it would be a tie. You can't just say shit.
Yeah, it would be a tie. So anyhow, I do find Bill Maher to be interesting insofar as he just calls out just the dumbest stuff, right? You can't just say that, right? Well, he does just say that. Anyhow, good stuff. Hope you enjoy that. Remember, you can follow us on all the social media platforms. Please do that. Reach out, follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube. We've got a brand new Forgotten America podcast dropped yesterday. Claire Abernathy, she is transitioning. You know, this is the dirty secret of transgenderism. Those that get led down that path and then say, wait a second. This is not what was supposed to happen. Claire Abernathy was given a full double radical mastectomy. She got started on hormone therapy at the age of 12 after a 1 hour meeting with a therapist. She said she was so drugged up on antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs that she was just a zombie as they led her through this. She said, thankfully, COVID came and everything stopped, saved her life, what was left of it. Don't miss any of this. It's on YouTube. Look up Steve Gruber on YouTube, one of the Forgotten America podcast episodes. You're going to love it. All right, I'll be right back. What do you think about Mexico getting rid of cash? How does that make you feel? I mean, honestly, it's been something that's been discussed for a very long time. The elimination of cash, the cashless society. I read a book back in the 1980s about going cashless, about how they said you'd have the ability to scan your hand. They said, well, that'll never happen. Really? Go into Whole Foods. Scan your hand. You're good to go. This device, Apple Pay or whatever they call it, you got that. You've got Venmo and all these other pay plans and this and that. And I see these people, you probably do too. I still see the people standing along, at the side of the road with their sign, homeless, can you spare some money, whatever the signs say, right? And I'm like, nobody carries cash anymore the way they used to. It's got to be a tough grind out there. I mean, they ought to get one of those little, what's that little thing called that goes on your phone? You can swipe your card, the cube or whatever it's called. That's what they ought to take there at the intersection. You know what I'm talking about, Anthony? The little thing that you put on your phone, you swipe your card. Yeah.
Like a little pay square thing. Or
Yeah. They ought to have those out on the on the corner. Otherwise, they're going to make no money.
They could even ask if they want a tip on top of the donation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the tip will automatically show up. Sometimes, this is something else that makes me angry. The auto tip. Ivy and I were somewhere, and they said, well, we just added a 20% gratuity. With what? No permission? So basically, you just jacked up the price 20% and called it a gratuity. I can't stand that. Anyhow, let me ask you something. How many of you feel mentally fried about mid-afternoon? I'm going to today because I only got 5 hours of sleep. But Brain Reward from Victory Nutrition International, that's not caffeine. It's not a stimulant. No jittery nonsense. Brain Reward designed to support focus, mental clarity, and calm without revving you up or crashing you later. It's from my good friends at Victory Nutrition International. They only have 6 supplements. Ivy did the homework. These are the best vitamins, best supplements you are going to see or try. Trust me on this. You can take Brain Reward during the day before a long meeting. Your brain won't just slow down. You will still function and function well. Find out more at vni.life/Gruber. vni.life/Gruber. Check it out. We did the homework, so you don't have to. Back with more after this.
From the heart of America, where hard work, freedom, and faith still define who we are. From the farms to the factories, from small towns to city streets, this is the fight for the soul of our nation.
We're watching Democrats attack democracy. Do not be fooled.
The strength, the grit, the greatness of the American spirit, all right here.
The left wanted power, not peace, but there's a resistance rising. A generation saying enough, enough. We've tried it their way, and it failed.
The Steve Gruber Show with your host, Steve Gruber, starts right now.
All right, as we continue fighting for you from the Foxhole FM, welcome back to another big hour here on the program. Look, we'll be shoulder to shoulder in this thing, saving America. Here are three big things you need to know this hour. Number one, John Fetterman, the Pennsylvania senator, finds himself on an island more and more these days, completely at odds with the far left fringe of what used to be the Democrat Party. How long until he has seen enough? Good question. Number two, despite high oil prices, the economy continues to get stronger. Jobs numbers are good, unemployment going down, inflation improving, but energy is the wild card. And number three, let's dig a little deeper into the ongoing war in Iran. There's little debate that we have achieved an overwhelming victory on the battlefield, in the skies, on the water, destroying the Iranian Air Force, sinking the Iranian Navy. And yet, to hear the rabid Trump haters talk, we're losing. We're losing. I can assure you we're not. The mainstream media can root for the Islamic regime, but the American people don't spit on the U.S. military. They support them. And the rescue that was pulled off while an attack was being delivered to IRGC leadership was absolutely brilliant. The multi-pronged assault delivered a pilot back to the U.S. and IRGC leaders to wherever it is they go in the afterlife. Listen to this.
Yeah, Harris, good morning. High-ranking U.S. sources telling Fox News that while that rescue was ongoing over the weekend, that CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper directed a strike against an IRGC underground headquarters outside of the Iranian capital of Tehran. Fox News has learned that B-2 bombers were used during this strike, along with massive ordnance penetrators, bunker buster bombs, to target this facility, the same weapons used in Operation Midnight Hammer. And I am told by these high-ranking U.S. sources that the headquarters of the IRGC was obliterated in that strike. This is significant because it speaks to the intelligence and military excellence of the U.S. military. As this rescue was ongoing, they were hammering the Iranian regime just outside the capital of Tehran with B-2 bombers overhead, U.S. Special Forces on the ground, more than 100 of them, rescuing that airman and bringing the fight to the IRGC just outside of the Iranian capital.
You know, that sums it up pretty well, and I thought that was an interesting report. Ivy's joining me now. Ivy, good morning. And, you know, and you see all of this happening, and you see this remarkable recovery of one person in this giant country, dozens of planes coordinated. And I played this at the top of the show. You listen to the left.
Oh, yeah.
They're rooting for Iran. They would, this, and I'm sorry to say this, but this is the truth. They would be okay to see that pilot not make it home safe. They'd be okay to see that pilot in captivity or dead if it was a stain on Donald Trump. And that is shocking and sad.
I completely agree with that assessment. And actually, I have a clip as well. Jamal Simmons, a former communications director for VP Harris, with Scott Jennings on CNN yesterday. Let's take a listen to this.
We know that the regime is basically still in charge. We know that Iran is basically in charge of the chokehold in the Straits of Hormuz. It just doesn't seem like we're making any progress.
You don't think
other than destroying
military
a bunch of targets that still have kept the regime in
what
place?
Regime? The people that were in charge are dead. There's now new people, and there's been credible reporting that they're having trouble even communicating with each other. They're very scrambled.
Just different leaders.
It's the same regime. The president is the same, by the way.
You don't know. I mean, the person they say is in charge has never been seen in public. You've seen a cardboard cutout, but that's all we know. And
no,
so
that
doesn't sound great to me if I were in there.
It might not sound great, but the IRGC and the way they're structured is so entrenched in the Iranian society that there's not regime change hasn't happened. A leadership change has happened.
They're in such great shape that we had pilots on the ground in Iran for 2 days, and we sent hundreds of special forces in and rescued them, and the IRGC and nobody in the civilian population could seem to find or help
Scott,
them
I think,
capture our guys. They're not in great
shape. But Scott, you can't.
I mean, right there.
It's shameless.
Jamal Simmons sums up the Democratic Party's position on what's going on in Iran.
But Iran's doing fine. But
Yeah.
they're rooting
There's
for
no
Iran.
regime change. There, we aren't making any progress, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what they say.
Right, and it was 2 of the planes sent in to rescue the pilot got stuck. I don't know if you knew this.
Mm-hmm.
Got stuck in the mud.
And they blew them up.
So they blew them up and left them and brought in other planes to get them out. That's how effective the IRGC is right now. They can't even find planes stuck in the mud to blow them up. We blow up our own planes.
Right.
And here's the other part of all this that is just ridiculous. President Trump says if not by 8 o'clock tonight, you have made a deal to open the Strait of Hormuz. We are going to blow up power stations and water supplies and take out bridges. And what's the left yelling? War crimes. War crimes. Right. It's not a war crime. In fact, if they could read, they might be dangerous. The Geneva Convention, Additional Protocol 1, Article 52. Military objectives include objects that contribute to enemy military action, like power grids, bridges, supporting logistics, war production. If the military is benefiting from that bridge, from that power supply, from that water supply,
they can take them out.
You can take it out. It's not a war crime, but by God, the Democrats are going to scream war crime at the top of their lungs, wherever they can, wherever they can. They're like a moth to the flame when it comes to TV cameras.
Of course, I'm not talking about the war crime that the Iranian regime did to their own people by killing, 30,000, thousands of
murdering
their own people, murdering them.
But that's fine.
That.
They're not Trump, you see, so that's okay.
Right, or launching missiles at hotel buildings in other countries,
but again,
to their country.
They're not Trump. Right. That's okay. You see, you got to understand how this works, Ivy. If it's Trump that stubs somebody's toe, he's a war criminal.
Right.
They can go after high-rise fancy hotels in Abu Dhabi, and that's okay because they're winning. I mean, these people will go so far.
They're deranged. I mean, I think that the Trump derangement syndrome is very real. It is unfortunate because, if we could just rally behind our president in this sort of time, rally behind our troops.
Yeah.
I mean, what an incredible rescue. I know that the CIA was involved as well.
Did I tell you?
And that just gives a lot of enthusiasm to our troops. Like, we're not going to leave you behind.
Support
And
ever.
Not this president.
Did I mention to you that our buddy Esquire Bob, who's a liberal Democrat, but not radical crazy, he said Trump derangement syndrome is real. He goes, I got people, you can't even talk about Trump around me. And he's a Democrat. He can't say anything about Trump, and he's a Democrat. I mean, these people are just so...
They just lose their minds. And
it did. It's a mind virus.
You can't have a conversation with them because they just they lose their mind. They can't have a good debate about it. They just say, put their hands up. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. I have my opinion.
La 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 la.
Yeah, put their fingers in their ears and don't care what you have to say. And that's unfortunate. I think we need to get back to dialogue in this country and be able to say, hey, that's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. Let's sit down and have dinner together. Let's break bread. Right. Even though we don't agree, that's okay.
Yeah.
But, I just think that there's so many voices out there that, even on both sides, okay?
Not on both sides. No, don't do that.
No, there's some people on the right that...
but it's not unbalanced. No. Unbalanced. Trump derangement syndrome, you nailed it.
Let's look at Megyn Kelly and Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, okay? Just saying.
Do we have to? All right, fine.
All right. Love you.
Love you too. Back in a bit after this. Homelessness, all right? So that's the focus of our next conversation here. You know, I've seen the Great Society spend trillions of dollars to lower poverty and eliminate poverty. Never works. I see these billboards while I'm driving down the street. End poverty today. Just send us $20. Okay, gotcha. My next guest, though, is actually working hard to try to figure out a way to end homelessness. State Representative Houston Gaines represents Georgia's House District 120. Houston, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me. Good morning.
All right, so look, we see initiatives to stop homelessness. California might be the worst example, and maybe they just have no idea what they're doing. That on a few other things as well.
I think that's probably accurate.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, but they can use more and more money on homelessness. I can go back for 20 years and Gavin Newsom talking about ending homelessness, and it just never ends. What is different here? What's going on with this bill in Georgia?
Well, the bill that we passed is going to hold these jurisdictions that aren't doing their job accountable, and ultimately, what's going to happen is you're going to help those individuals who are homeless because it's going to force these local governments to actually get these folks help, and it's also going to help property owners, business owners in these communities who right now they're going to their business and they have someone sleeping on their front door when they get there. They have someone who's defecated on their front porch when they get to their business, and they're having to work on that, and it's not fair to these property owners. So the bill that we passed, what it does is it allows property owners in local jurisdictions where they're not enforcing their own ordinances or state law related to panhandling, loitering, and illegal camping, that property owners who have expenses they have to incur, whether that's security cameras, fencing, or otherwise, or if the value of their home or property has been diminished, then they can go and get a refund on their property taxes up to those expenses incurred or the loss of value of their home or business.
How difficult?
And again, the goal here. Sure.
How difficult to go get this refund is an important question, because if there's a mechanism where the business owner is tired of finding the guy sleeping drunk, vomiting on his front porch, whatever it may be, and he starts going and saying, you owe me $100, you owe me $1,000, you owe me $2,500, that will get the attention of the people at City Hall.
It will be, and there's a process that we clearly laid out in the legislation that forces local government to respond within 30 days, and then an easy process for property owners to go through in the courts if they're trying to be held up by the local government. And what, to your point, this is going to get their attention. What's not fair is that you have these local governments that aren't doing their job, and then they're handing those property owners the tax bill to fund that local government that just failed them, and that's not fair. Local citizens should not be holding the bag at the end of the day when their local government has failed them. And so that's what this bill does. We also put very important illegal immigration legislation in here that does the same. If your local government is a sanctuary city, it also applies in those jurisdictions. We also put legislation that gives citizens what's called a mandamus action against sanctuary cities that allows them to go to the courts and make sure they're holding those jurisdictions accountable. We're not going to allow sanctuary cities. We passed a bill. I led the bill a couple years ago that made it a crime for Democrat officials. If they're ignoring the law, then they're going to get charged. If they're not going to enforce our immigration laws in the state of Georgia, we mandate that you cooperate with ICE. We mandate that you work with our federal immigration authorities. And this bill furthers that as well. So I think between what we've done a couple years ago and what we've done here, really important legislation. I live in Athens, where Laken Riley was killed. I live in Athens, where our local government has let homelessness run rampant. And so we have to get to work. That's what we've done in the legislature. I'm proud of what we've accomplished.
All right, so let me understand this then, and I want to be clear about this. House Bill 295 does not criminalize homelessness. It just empowers the business owners and the people who live on that street to take some action to clean up and correct a problem. It doesn't throw the homeless people in jail. When it comes to sanctuary cities and so forth, all right, so HB 295 on homelessness, that's going to the governor's desk. Do you expect it to be signed?
I do.
All right, and then when it comes to sanctuary cities and so forth, what do you expect?
So we put that in the same bill. It's all wrapped into House Bill 295. We wanted this to be a comprehensive piece of legislation that is going to help public safety across this state. And so I expect this legislation to be signed. The governor has 40 days. We feel really good about that and getting this into action. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to hold local governments accountable. Our goal here isn't for a bunch of property owners to use this refund. Instead, our goal is to get local governments to do their dang job and enforce the law. And I think I know that's what this legislation is going to do. Arizona did something somewhat similar a couple years ago, and you saw local governments in the state of Arizona quickly clean up their act, because the only way to hit these local governments is in their pocketbook. That's the only way to get them to respond. And that's what this legislation does. That's why I'm confident they're going to respond and they're going to clean up their act.
All right, I want to shift gears with you just for a moment here. Georgia, the epicenter of voter fraud in investigations and questions and concerns. What has been improved between 2020, 2022, 24, and this November? What has been done to make sure that elections in Georgia can be trustworthy?
So if you remember a couple years ago, we passed legislation that the Major League Baseball came to Georgia and said it was Jim Crow 2.0, and Stacey Abrams said it was Jim Crow 2.0, and that was after 2020, where we had all the issues. We passed legislation to address many of those issues. Listen, we're not where we need to be this legislative session. We didn't get some important election integrity legislation passed that I believe we needed to, but we have improved significantly from where we were in 2020, where you had absentee ballots being sent out to everybody. You had all these issues. We cleaned that up with with SB 202. That's what the Democrats call it, Jim Crow 2.0, that allowed and ensured that you're going to have voter ID on everything. That's why we need the Save America Act. It's crazy. It's crazy that that's even controversial. Why would anybody not want voter ID?
You got voter ID in Georgia, don't you? I mean,
100%.
I do in Michigan. You got it in Georgia. Just take it nationwide. The All-Star game taken out of Atlanta and sent to the whitest city in Major League Baseball, that being Denver. Yeah, that made a lot of sense.
If I remember correctly, we actually had more days of early voting than the state they took it to. I mean, it's just crazy what the national media does, and they just tell a false tale on all these different issues.
Houston Gaines, greatly appreciate you being here, sir. Thank you for sharing. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Good conversation. Election integrity first and foremost. I'll be right back. So here we go again. You know, and I read these cases and I'm like, who is in charge of the insane asylum? And what I'm talking about is one district judge. One district judge. Just you go judge shopping, you find one district judge who doesn't like what you're doing. You get them to write some sort of an opinion, and then you can shut something down. Like building the ballroom at the White House. It stopped because one district judge said you have to stop. Right? What's his name? Judge Richard Leon ruled the project cannot proceed without congressional approval. So we're going to have a half-open construction site for what, months or years because of this lame brain district judge who should have no such power, by the way, because district judges are basically local judges. Can you imagine a district judge having the audacity to think he can dictate when you're going to build the ballroom? Anyhow, let's see. There's foundation structures, fortified security reasons, steel, ballistic, bulletproof glass, drone-proof roofing, all of this. And it's sitting there doing nothing. It's sitting there idle because of one district judge. Unbelievable. Honestly, unbelievable. This part of the program brought to you by my good friends at Birch Gold. Yeah, Birch Gold. You need to make sure that you're ready for anything that happens. And gold has been a stay of wealth forever in this world. And my friends at Birch Gold say it's time to take a look at it again. A 401k into Birch Gold, that would be a great idea. I don't have it to look at, by the way. Birch Gold. Just text 989898 to Voice
America.
Well, sure. Text 989898 to America, and you can find out more. All right, I'll take a break and be right back. It is the Steve Gruber Show. All right, back to it now. The level of complexity here. I heard somebody say, looking at the rescue of these two pilots out of Iran after their F-15E Strike Eagle was knocked down by a manpad, they said it was more complicated than taking out Osama bin Laden. And I'm thinking, well, that's really kind of a remarkable thing to say. Joining me now is Colonel Rob Maness, 32-year Air Force veteran, host of the Rob Maness Show. Rob, nice to see you again. Is that a fair comparison that this was more complicated? I mean, this second pilot lost on Friday, hidden all day Saturday in a crevice of a cave somewhere, apparently, to be rescued on Sunday. It's kind of a fitting day for that to happen, Easter Sunday. But how complicated, how sophisticated was this?
Well, I think it's very appropriate to compare it to the bin Laden raid. Look, that was going into a country that had no idea we were coming. There were no threats on the ground other than directly inside the compound that anybody was aware of. Nobody was looking for our team. And in this case, you have a complete complex operation established literally on the fly. Yes, there's always a plan. But the plan always falls apart when it makes first contact with the enemy in reality. And you have the second airman that's unfortunately gets known to be out there and evading to the Iranian enemy forces, to the Iranian population who's been incentivized with a reward to try to capture this guy and turn him over to authorities. And we literally set up an airbase inside enemy territory and operated from it for almost 48 hours. Didn't lose one American or one friendly at all in this operation, and brought the man home.
I think a couple of planes got stuck and we had to leave them behind. They got stuck. So from what I read, but
those are equipment. Those aren't casualties. We lost no Americans in this.
Right, we lost some gear
completely on the fly.
So we're doing this absent any assistance from Spain, Germany, the British, and all of these people are like, I sit here, Colonel, and when Ukraine and Russia went to war, February of 2022, man, they were demanding pallets of cash, all of our gear. We must stand with our allies. Ukraine's not actually an ally. Look, we're friendly with them. I get that. But when we acquiesce and bring in all sorts of gear, Javelin missiles and Patriot missiles and whatever else we brought in. We need help in Iran. And really, it's for their energy supply. And they turn around and give us the cold shoulder. I mean, no wonder NATO's in. Don't blame Donald Trump for NATO being in stress right now. Blame your people from your weak-willed, spineless, feckless, socialist governments of Europe. Where am I wrong?
Unfortunately, you're not wrong. And it's worse than that, Steve. Look, the French and some others, that are, it's my understanding, they've made separate deals with Iran so they could move their ships through the Strait of Hormuz and not be molested by the Iranians' military. So it's not only a fracture of NATO; it's a complete dishonesty with your ally, the United States of America, who's propped you up for decades now, to the point where the reason why they don't want to help in the Strait of Hormuz, Steve, is because they don't have the capability to help. They don't have the capability to help us in this war
does England,
at the level that we need to help with, and we're just going to have to go it along with the Israelis.
Yeah, I'm going to be old school. Does England, I don't care when we start calling it the UK, does England have the ability to defend itself, period? Does Germany have the ability to defend itself? France, maybe. France might have the only respectable army left on the continent, but good Lord. Well, what does the UK have to offer us? Well, how about the Kingdom of Denmark? What are they offering us in this deal with 32 countries of NATO? I'm being serious. We support all these countries, these tiny little countries that have zero value. I mean, if we've already seen, Colonel, if it hits the fan, America's on its own. These people aren't coming across the Atlantic to defend us. Heck, they'll send 12 troops to Greenland to say how much they dislike Donald Trump, but they won't send 12 troops to New York City if it needed it, I don't think. Where am I wrong?
Unfortunately, you're not wrong, Steve. They're not going to do it because they can't do it. They've allowed themselves to completely decimate their defense capabilities over these last decades. while the United States of America increases our capability and increases the amount of money we put into the NATO allowance. And that's not even counting the wasted resources in this Ukraine war that should have been settled a long time ago before it even started. The president's right when he says, when Donald Trump says the war would have started in office, and he's absolutely right because he knows how to manage that and manage a guy like Putin. And these feckless idiots from the Biden administration couldn't do any of that except for acquiesce to these crazy requests from NATO and from the Ukrainians that put our national security at risk and put our vital national interests at risk that aren't even associated with Eastern Europe and those kind of things. So no, they've let their capability go. As a matter of fact, the Germans are now telling their draft age men that they're not allowed to leave the country for more than 45 days, I don't believe, because they're all of a sudden worried that the United States is no longer going to be there. And you know what? We've got over 100,000 in Europe right now.
Big Brother isn't going to show up with all of his toys and cash and throw his people into the meat grinder anymore. I've long thought we should leave the United Nations. 25 years ago, I think we should have left the United Nations. And now, what value does NATO have? It's a serious question. I'm not saying we should stay or go, but what value today, Rob, does NATO have for the United States of America?
The only thing it does is create over complexity when we're trying to do an operation like this Iran operation. Look, Turkey's a NATO ally, and you can't trust them as far as you could throw them.
That's right.
The German NATO ally. The Spanish are a NATO ally. We're having to fly our airplanes around their airspace. Their leaders out there saying that he supports the Iranians and that kind of crazy stuff. We're having to fly heavy aircraft out of Romania because we can't use our bases all around the European continent like we're supposed to be able to do.
What do you think about the suggestion? What do you think about the suggestion of just closing those bases and bringing 125,000 Americans home? You know what? If we can't use the base, why do we have it? Last word to you.
Well, I say we keep the base in caretaker status and don't let those guys have it back. Because
Good
look,
point.
Today is bridge and power plant day in Iran, and the Brits are saying we can't use our B-1 bombers and B-52 bombers from RAF Fairford to attack them because they're war crimes if we attack bridges and power plants.
But it's not a war crime.
Which is absolutely ludicrous. You're right. It's ludicrous to even propose that. Those are military use facilities, which makes them valid, legal targets.
Right here, according to the Geneva Convention, Additional Protocol 1, Article 52. That's right. Got it right here, Rob. It's not a war crime. But Britain blocking us from using our facility, that would be a war crime. I say fly out of there anyway. What are they going to do? What are they going to do if you fly the planes out of there anyway? I do a damn thing. Tired of feckless weasels, Rob. I'm in a mood, Rob. Greatly appreciate you being here. Thank you, sir. Unbelievable. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to it now as we plow through a Tuesday, a cold Tuesday out there. I thought spring was here. I guess it made its appearance and then moved on. Food companies still lack full visibility to their suppliers, creating hidden compliance and safety risk across global networks. Where does your food come from? Eat real food, right? Well, if you can't really figure out where it comes from, that's concerning. Supply chains. Global supply chains. I like my supply chain to run from the backyard to my kitchen, but it's not always that easy. That is. David Linares, co-founder and president of Registrar Corporation, joining me now. David, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, well, I'm good. You know, it seems to me in this day and age, when you've got all of this technology, all of this AI now, how hard is it to track a tomato that starts in California or Guatemala or wherever it starts? And gets put on a ship, and look, every one of these little fruits and vegetables has a tag on it with a little barcode on it. How hard is it to track food where it comes from?
Sure. So that's fairly easy, right? That's not where the problems lie. Where the problems lie is with processed foods. And let's face it, we all eat lots of different products that are actually not a single sourced product, right? So not a tomato or a cucumber or some other fruit or vegetable, which is very easy to track. You are correct. Where the problems come in is with processed food products. Let's take applesauce as an example. Sure, you may start with apples that are grown in the U.S., but the company producing that applesauce then is certainly, there's other ingredients in applesauce. So let's say you're using cinnamon and it's a cinnamon flavored applesauce. Well, your cinnamon and your sugar, perhaps, but certainly your cinnamon is not produced in the US. It's coming in from overseas. And you may recall last year, there was an issue with cinnamon in applesauce. It was produced in a foreign country, exported to the US, and had high quantities of lead in the applesauce. And this is where the problems come in when you have multi-ingredient products, and there's a long supply chain with many different players producing the various products. And that's really where the problems start to arise, both from a food safety issue, but also from an economic fraud issue, which was the case of the cinnamon, the lead placed in the cinnamon where it was produced and then exported to the manufacturers in the United States.
Yeah, it seems to me, David, the more highly processed, the more difficult it is. Because applesauce is pretty basic, right? You got cinnamon, you got apples, maybe some sugar, whatever. You get into the middle of a grocery store, and you've got a list that's as long as my arm. First of all, I try not to eat any of that garbage, to be fair. But a lot of this stuff begins overseas. A lot of this stuff begins, Central and South America produce a lot of fruits and vegetables that are combined in whatever, different products that end up on your shelf. Still more stuff comes from Vietnam and sometimes from China. It depends.
Sure.
So how do you keep track of all that? And if you can't keep track of it, how concerned should I be? Because, look, I don't want to eat fish that comes from Vietnam. I'm just going to tell you right now. I don't. I don't know what the heavy metal contamination is. I don't know what the mercury contamination is. I don't want anything to do with it. So I'm mindful of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and to be clear, the vast majority of a couple categories of products that we eat are imported: fruits and vegetables, and seafood. Seafood's another one. And thirdly, spices. And, of course, spices, we're putting in lots of products, even if they're not super complex products. I think the amazing thing that most consumers aren't aware of is that the US FDA actually inspects less than 2% of every shipment that arrives in the United States. Right. So very little is looked at. So what does that mean? Well, there is a regulatory framework that's in place, but that framework, of course, relies on enforcement. Just like we have speed limits on a highway, if you don't have some police out there, every once in a while speed trapping, that speed limit sign eventually will really mean nothing.
It
Bottom
basically
line
means
is,
nothing today to me. But anyhow, go on.
yeah, bottom line is, with very complex supply chains, companies are supposed to do certain things to make sure their suppliers, their foreign manufacturers, are meeting the regulatory requirements of the US. But let's face it, their supply chain, their manufacturing systems, they're not at the same standard as the US. And the only way those companies really ever get a close look is if FDA physically goes out and knocks on the door and inspects those overseas companies. Last year alone, just to give you an idea, we had over 450,000 unique shipments of food from India into the U.S. China sat at 360,000 shipments of food into the United States. Food, beverages, dietary supplements, I include all that together.
Mostly supplements,
that was in
yeah.
2025. And interestingly, both were actually higher numbers than in 2024, even with the tariffs coming into place last year. So the tariffs certainly have not really slowed down the importation of food products from overseas.
All right, we got to leave it there. This is a good conversation we should continue, David, because when you go into a grocery store and you start becoming a label reader, which I became a label reader probably a decade ago.
That's great. That's great.
And you start looking at, well, here's Peru, and I got nothing against Peru or Mexico or whatever.
Sure.
But you start to become mindful that the farther the food travels, the more preservatives it takes. What was the state of that avocado when it came off the tree? Was it like a baseball? Of course it was, because by the time it gets to your store, it's only got a 2-day shelf life. All these things. We'll have you back, David. Good conversation. Thank you for the insights. More
thanks,
to come.
Steve.
Really
Very good.
appreciate
Take
it.
care.
Thank you very much. All right. Where does your food come from? Well, oftentimes my backyard. We'll tell you more about that come fall. All right. When I come back, sports with Brock, right here on the Steve Gruber Show. right, let's check it out. Sports now with my friend Brock Palmbush.
With a look at sports, I'm Brock Palmbush. The Michigan Wolverines are the national champions of men's college basketball. This after holding off Connecticut 69-63 in the title game last night at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Elliot Cadeau led the Wolverines with 19 points and was named Final Four's most outstanding player. Alex Karaban led Connecticut with 17 points, 11 rebounds. It's Michigan's first national title since 1989. Also in college basketball, multiple media outlets are reporting that North Carolina will hire former NBA coach Mike Malone as their new head coach. Malone coached the Denver Nuggets to the NBA title in 2023, but hasn't coached in college since 2001. In Major League Baseball yesterday, American League winners included Tampa Bay, Minnesota, and Texas. National League winners included Washington, Milwaukee, and Colorado. In the NBA, just 5 games. Winners were New York, Orlando, Cleveland, San Antonio, and Denver. That's a look at sports. Back to you, Steve.
All right, Brock, as if, it's a funny thing about these championships, whether it's football, basketball, whatever. And I stayed up to watch because it's the home team, right?
Well, that's what you said earlier. You were like irritable or something. You were talking to the last guest or the 2 guests ago.
Never.
And you're like, oh, and I'm like, well, yeah, because you're on like 3 hours of sleep like me.
Yeah, I'm something like that. But what's funny to me is that they've already got the top 25 out for next year.
I know it's the way too early top 25 for next year, and I don't even really. I saw it last night because I was just all wired after watching the game. But
Michigan and Michigan State both in the top 10.
Both in the top 10. Yeah, we'll see if that happens. This all is contingent on if everybody who has eligibility left comes back. Yeah. But you know what? When you win a championship, it doesn't happen all that often. So you take time to enjoy it, and they did last night in Ann Arbor.
Pretty remarkable. 5 transfers.
Yep, first time that's ever happened. A starting lineup of all transfers.
Yeah,
helped them win the national championship. They buried Connecticut from the free throw line, 25 of 28 from the free throw line.
That was the difference maker.
And you talked about yesterday about slowing the game down and less possessions and all of that. Well, that happened, and Michigan still won.
It's what they tried.
Yep.
Hurley, the coach is right. He did the right thing. Anyhow.
Yep, he's a terrific coach. Slowed the game like they needed to, and it still wasn't quite enough.
Not enough. All right, Michigan national champions. I'll take a break and be back with more of the Steve Gruber Show straight ahead.
From the heart of America, where hard work, freedom, and faith still define who we are. From the farms to the factories, from small towns to city streets, this is the fight for the soul of our nation.
We're watching Democrats attack democracy. Do not be fooled.
The strength, the grit, the greatness of the American spirit, all right here.
The left wanted power, not peace, but there's a resistance rising. A generation saying enough, enough. We've tried it their way, and it failed.
The Steve Gruber Show with your host, Steve Gruber, starts right now.
All right, and welcome back to it as we continue here into another big hour of the program, fighting for you from the Foxhole of Freedom. Greatly appreciate you being here. Today is Strait of Hormuz Day. We'll find out what the president's going to do on his deadline to assault electrical and municipal water supplies in Iran. Number two, Mamdani says that he's looking for an equitable future. His opponents say he's an idiot. And number three, quick shout out to the University of Michigan basketball team, national champions. Not really what we're going to talk about a lot today, but I will in a minute when Katie Hyde joins me from Michigan News Source. What I want to talk about here for a moment is the price of gasoline. Because once again, the price of oil is higher than it should be. It's spiked to $1.15 today. $1.15. More ships are moving through the Strait of Hormuz now. And yet the price of oil spikes and the price of gasoline spikes, which means it's not normal. It's not being controlled normally, 414. It's being controlled by forces other than natural market forces, which means speculators, manipulators, profiteers, and oil companies celebrating how much money they're getting. That's what it is. Make no mistake. In California, for example, taxes on gas is out of control along with other expenses doesn't add up. Some stations, listen to this, almost $10 a gallon. Let's go to bite number 3 here. Listen to the price of gasoline in California. Here it is.
The difference is what I call the mystery gasoline surcharge.
Dr. Borenstein says before 2015, when a refinery closed in Torrance, California's gas prices were largely in line with the national average, with another 90 cents to a buck tacked on for our state's gas taxes and environmental costs. But with prices now $2 above the average, the math makes no sense even to the experts.
Since 2015, California's additional payments for gasoline above what's justified by taxes and environmental costs is amounts to over $60 billion.
Dr. Borenstein says limited refining capacity and the state's specially mixed cleaner burning fuel account for about a third of that extra dollar.
Most of the differential actually occurs downstream, somewhere in the distribution, marketing, and retailing of the gasoline.
Now the state has impaneled a new California Energy Commission division to investigate the so-called mystery surcharge.
Yeah, I think 100% investigate it. If we're paying more for no reason or we don't even understand why we're paying more, 100% investigate it.
California also lost a large oil refinery last year near LA, and the Valero refinery in Benicia is set to close this month. Dr. Borenstein says the loss of those two refineries and uncertainty around the state's ability to get other oil imports could lead to even higher gas prices here.
Yeah. So, you look at the Strait of Hormuz, higher prices, $10 a gallon. Most of that is the fault of the people in California. The national average right now, $4.14. So if California is paying double, that's not the fault of oil prices. That's the fault of taxes, fees, regulations, all of it. California is a great piece of real estate with really bad leadership is what it is. A great piece of real estate, bad leadership. The Strait of Hormuz has 20% of the world's global oil supply, as you know. Flows dropped from about 20 million barrels a day to near zero, the largest supply shock in modern history. And you're seeing a risk premium build daily. Look, the oil's already been cut off to 20%. So you take out 20% of the world's oil supply, and it doubles the price of oil? Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Mm-mm. So, and I'm trying to figure out how this could possibly be true, but it's what's happening. The price of gasoline had stabilized here where I am. I think Anthony said he had paid $3.80 a gallon.
It went up 40 cents overnight.
Did it? So we're now at $4.20?
Yep.
Yeah, based on what? Sorry, I get a little upset. It's irritating because there's no cause and effect for it. Nothing changed between yesterday and today. The Strait of Hormuz didn't change from a week ago to where we are today, or 2 weeks ago to where we are today. None of that changed. The Strait of Hormuz was effectively closed 2 weeks ago. It's effectively got more tankers moving today than it did 2 weeks ago, and the price goes up, and now gas is $4.20. So, it's being driven by extreme fear, profiteering, and manipulation. Yeah. And speaking of, I want to go back to this war crime question. Speaking of the war on Iran and everything else, the New York Times and these others continue to push this narrative because they hate Trump. They want you to believe something that's not true. And those that want to believe it will believe it even though it's not true. That being that bombing power plants is a war crime. Let's go to bite number 7. The New York Times pushing this narrative that it's a war crime. Of course it's not, because if the military of the country you're dealing with is benefiting from the power supply or the bridge or the water supply, then it's not a war crime because they're benefiting from it. The military you're opposing is benefiting from those things. It's not just civilian. Listen.
The question, deliberate attacks on civilian infrastructure violate the Geneva Conventions and international law.
Who are you with?
I'm with the New York Times. Zolan from the New York Times. Are you
failing?
Are you concerned?
Circulation way down at the New York Times.
Are you concerned that your threat to bomb power plants and bridges amount to
No, not at all. No, I'm not. I hope I don't have to do it. But again, I just said 47 years they've been negotiating with these people. They're great negotiators, and because they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And if somebody that takes my place someday is weak and ineffective, which possibly that will happen because we had numerous presidents that were weak, ineffective, and afraid of Iran, we're never going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. And if you think it's okay for people that are sick of mind, that are tough, smart, and sick, really sick, from a policy standpoint, from a standpoint, any which way you want to say, mentally, these are disturbed people. If you think I'm going to allow them, and powerful and rich, to have a nuclear weapon, you can tell your friends at the New York Times, not going to happen.
Not going to happen. Tell your friends at the New York Times, both of them that are left there. New York Times used to be a paper that mattered. But are you as sick and tired of them, those in the media, CNN, Chicken Noodle News, MS Now, whatever, almost openly cheering for Iran to win because they hate Trump so much they'd like to see America lose? It's really sad. I think it is sick. I'll take a break and be back. Katie Hyde from Michigan News Source. All right, jumping back into it now. Yeah, I was up late last night, as you can imagine. We were watching the home team, and UConn played well because they made Michigan play ugly. Michigan didn't even make a three-point shot in the first half. Join me now, Katie Hyde from Michigan News Source. Katie does sports, by the way.
Yeah, I stayed up late too. I know we both get up at the crack of dawn, so it was a little bit of a struggle this morning, but it was well worth it.
Yeah, it was worth it. Michigan, they won ugly, but they won. I mean, it was not their best, most poetic game, but they win, right?
A win's a win. A lot of shoving and pushing I saw, but it was really great to see them get that win after 37 years. 1989 was the last year that they won that national championship, and I remember that game. Do you remember that game, Steve?
Last time they won, I sat in a place called the Molly Brown in Bozeman, Montana, and watched the game in 1989 when I was in college with a friend of mine, Sean. We sat there and watched because we were of the opinion a round earlier or 2 rounds earlier that if Michigan could just get by North Carolina just once, they'd have a shot at winning it. Well, they did get by and beat North Carolina that year and went on and won in overtime over Seton Hall. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's good for the home team. It's good for the home team. I see and I was just talking to Brock Palbush about this. The top 10 for next year already out. Michigan and Michigan State both in the top 10 to start the year next year. Because the season hasn't been over long enough for us not to start talking about that.
Right. 7 or 8 hours, it's fine. We'll start talking about next year. But yeah, it should be a good year for both Michigan schools. It should be exciting.
Yeah, there you go. And now Michigan goes on, I think, to the Frozen Four, aren't they, in the college hockey national championship too? So all sorts of stuff going on.
Yeah, it's a good time to be a Michigander, that's for sure.
Well, it is in sports.
Yes, let me clarify that.
Yeah, in sports it's good. In other places, Dana Nessel, of course, challenging Donald Trump's mail-in ballot restrictions. Mail-in ballots are illegal all over the world because they're ripe for fraud, of course, but it just seems that you can't find a Democrat that doesn't love them. Certainly here in Michigan, they love mail-in ballots. In fact, 2 friends of mine I sent this to you guys, got mail-in ballots or application or whatever, one to an address he hasn't lived in 25 years in a township where he hasn't been in 25 years, and he finds out that it's been forwarded to him, right? People getting ballots where they don't live, that's a problem, but the Democrats don't seem to care, do they? Dana Nessel just wants to continue pumping them out, doesn't she?
She does. I was reading some of the comments on one of the stories. I believe it was this story we did on Friday where Nessel is challenging Trump in court again. She's at 50 plus lawsuits against the Trump administration, Steve.
Is that some sort of record?
Oh my goodness. It's over things. It's everything over Trump, not necessarily anything to do with the benefit of the people here in Michigan. And someone had said, if you get a mail-in ballot or you get multiple mail-in ballots and didn't request them or at a long address, we have a system in place to deal with that. This was a random commenter, and I thought this is the problem. So Trump has said that mail-in ballots are rife with fraud, and Nessel is pushing back. And what's interesting about this executive order that Trump put out is that he is targeting the Postal Service. He wants to compile a national list of people who should be on the voter rolls, and the Department of Justice has requested those voter rolls from states. Of course, Michigan's Jocelyn Benson has pushed back against that. But he is going to put some strict guidelines on there if the post office delivers absentee ballots to anyone not on that nationally compiled list. So that seems to make sense to me, that you would want to cut down on the amount of potential fraud out there. But Democrats continue to push back against this. Out of one side of their mouth, they say that elections are secure, but we have non-citizens voting. We have absentee ballots showing up at homes where people don't live there. It's a problem. And another problem is, Steve, is that people are upset at President Trump for issuing an executive order. What in the world has Congress done during his last 1 year plus in office? Congress has done nothing to pass anything remotely related to voter security and to cut down on the fraud. And so a lot of people are laying blame at the feet of Congress for these types of EOs.
I'm still stuck on this whole 50 lawsuits from Dana Nessel against the president. Remind me, Katie, did Donald Trump win Michigan in the presidential election 24?
Overwhelmingly so. The people have spoken that they
by more than 1 million votes or something like that.
Yes,
More than 100,000 votes, excuse me, in Michigan. So he won by more than 100,000 votes. Clear mandate by the people, and yet she continues to want to sue him. All right, so let's talk about utility bills for a second. I want to shift gears because, I mean, there's nothing that drives people to conversation at the coffee shop or over the kitchen table more than, have you seen the electric bill? I mean, honestly.
Yeah, we're at that age now, aren't we, Steve? Oh, it's ridiculous.
Got to be the same in your house as it is here. Like, have you seen this? I mean, Anthony's like, you can't believe this, because Anthony gets a BWL bill and a DTE or consumers, whoever else he's got.
Goodness.
It's out of
Anthony's a
control.
youngster. Right, but welcome to adulthood. Yes, I'm a consumer's customer, and it's been tough. I mean, we've been very blessed financially, and I get this consumer's bill, and I say, what in the world is going on? So consumers had asked for another rate hike. They got it approved about 10 days ago, and then on Friday, they said, yes, we're going to ask for another rate hike in May. Attorney General Dana Nessel, for all the lawsuits that she has filed against Trump, she has come out and at least said that she's upset with consumers and DTE Energy is the other main utility provider here in Michigan, upset with these constant rate increases. And in the state Senate, Senator Michelle Hoytinga has put out a bill. It came out last September. It's just kind of waffling there in the state Senate that says we need at least some lawmaker oversight over the Michigan Public Service Commission, which is a 3-member panel appointed by the governor. Yeah, voters have no choice. I mean, we vote for the governor. We say we have that choice, but not with this panel.
Really.
And so where's the oversight? And they
there's no oversight. They're monopolies. They get to do whatever they want. You know, you said you're blessed enough to pay your electric bill, and it just makes me think, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away in the form of your electric bill.
I tell my children, shut off those lights.
All right, Katie, MichiganNewsSource.com, MichiganNewsSource.com to find some more pithy stories and commentary. MichiganNewsSource.com. Katie, thank you.
Thank you.
So what was your question, Anthony? How do they do that?
Yeah, I just don't understand how they could possibly make our utility bills even more expensive, and and why somebody would approve them to raise their prices even more.
Well, as I was telling you here the other day, the consumers, DTE, they love the idea of knocking down coal-fired power plants and putting up new, natural gas-fired plants because they get to charge more money. They get to build all sorts of great new stuff. They love solar panels and windmills because they get to build new stuff, and they get to send you a new bill with an increase and a surcharge and everything else. It's criminal. It's a monopoly. Monopolies are not supposed to be legal in this world, not in this world we call United States. And yet, and it's not unique to Michigan. You go to American Electric Power in Ohio, or what's the one in Florida? Power and Light, whatever they're called, doesn't matter. Wherever you go, you're going to find these utility monopolies. And they'll say, well, if we're not a monopoly, we can't take care of these power transmission lines and everything that has to be done. We have to be a monopoly, and we need to raise rates. Indiana, by the way, Anthony, just lowered rates. The only state in America that I've heard of in years lowering rates because they have a different philosophy, apparently, just so you know. Mayor Mamdani in New York City has released his preliminary citywide racial equity plan. Came out yesterday. It explained the preliminary report the mayor had promised to release within 100 days. The true cost of living measure offers an honest account of what it actually costs to live in the city and who is being left behind. It shows that this is not a crisis affecting a small minority of New Yorkers. It is a crisis touching the vast majority of our city, in every borough, in every neighborhood. But we know it's not felt equally. Black and Latino New Yorkers who have been pushed out of the city for decades are bearing the brunt, and so on and so forth. You can see where this is going. The mayor put out a deal here to give advantages to black and brown and whatever marginalized groups. That's illegal in America. It will never go anywhere, but this is who they are. They'll keep pushing, trying to find division instead of unity. Let's find unity with energy coming up next. Enbridge. Spokesman Ryan Duffy will be here with the latest on the Line 5 replacement. All right, we've been talking about energy and gas prices, off and on, more intensely today because of the utility rate increases that we're talking about in Michigan. And the price of gasoline jumping, what did you say, it jumped 40 cents overnight? 40 cents, Anthony says it spiked overnight. So you talk about energy security. it's front and center these days. And the best way to move energy, pipelines. Everybody knows that, and yet you've got people that stand in opposition to it. It never makes a lot of no sense to me at all. Ryan Duffy is a member of the Enbridge communication team. They're working diligently to replace Line 5. It's a pipeline that runs on the floor of the Straits of Mackinac. They've got a bridge, a tunnel project, I should say, that they're moving forward on. Ryan, welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me back on.
It seems there's always some court action and some things to update folks on. I've heard a couple of different things. Bring us up to speed. What is the latest?
Well, yeah, so you mentioned the tunnel project. I mean, that's always what we're trying to push forward and keep moving. And we're in the permitting process still, as you know. We're very focused on quality and safety and making sure the project's done right every step of the way. And where we are now is with the Army Corps, and it continues to do its work and reviews and moving closer to a decision there, we think. And then at the state level, we're renewing a permit we had previously, but now we need to renew it. Their reviews are continuing with the state environmental agency, Eagle. So we believe a good way to look at this project really is that it's modernizing, it's upgrading, just like we're always upgrading everything in our lives, the computers, the phones, the cars, that's what we're doing with this piece of infrastructure. So that's really our mindset. Line 5 is extremely safe now, we know that, but the tunnel makes it even safer. That during construction, Line 5 is going to be continued to be operated safely there in the Straits. So our tunnel team's really focused on their work. We know the tunnel's the best way forward. We know it will both protect the environment and then those communities in northern Michigan, and at the same time make sure we have that energy we need and we're all using every day.
Absolutely true, and disruptions in energy create, as we've seen with what's going on in the Middle East, you can see disruptions in energy cause prices to spike. We don't want disruptions here, Ryan. We want a steady flow of energy that we can rely on, especially people in the UP that use propane, for example, to heat their homes more than any other place in America. You've met some new safety milestones recently, because people have tried to fight you every step of the way, you being Enbridge. And you've continued to check the boxes, to do the right things, to work with the right people, to locate the right teams and so forth and move forward. And safety has always been top of list for you, Ryan. Tell us what you've done most recently.
Yeah, so we did put in place our ESMOC, which we've talked about. It's the Enbridge Straits Maritime Operations Center, and it's there in St. Ignace. And so just last month, it actually recorded its 10,000th observation of ships passing through the Straits. And that's since April 2022. So as you know, the ESMOC is staffed around the clock by our team. It's really the control center for several different safety systems we put in place to help prevent any kind of anchor strike situation to Line 5 in the Straits. So for every ship that comes through, the ESMOC sends an electronic message to let the crew know it's a no anchor zone. We're contacting the captain by radio to confirm his anchors are up, and then we're verifying visually with all of our cameras we have positioned around the Straits that the anchors are up and secured. So it's all to make sure everything is safe, looking good before any ship comes through right above the Line 5 pipeline. So the 10,000 vessel, it was named the Algoma Niagara. It was carrying road salt between Ontario and Milwaukee. 17 crew members and the captain on there. So it was a nice moment. We gave the crew a commemorative coin to mark that. And overall, it's been a great partnership. We worked well with the shippers, talking to them every time they're going through there in the Straits.
So 10,000 ships that you've been in communication with to make sure they don't drop anchor and damage Line 5. What went on, Ryan, before Enbridge owned this pipeline? Was anybody talking to these ships? Was anybody doing the things that you're doing? It seems to me to be a great advancement in protecting the sanctity of Line 5 and therefore the sanctity of the Great Lakes.
Well, we think so. It's been a big investment, of course, but it's well worth it to keep the Straits safe there while we're building the tunnel. That's really what it was meant to do, make sure everything is safe and secure for all the shipping traffic while the tunnel is being built. As far as we know, it's unique to anywhere in the world to have something like this going on in a waterway like that. Paid for entirely by a company, and it's to make sure that things are looking good and safe. There's of course never been an incident or a release of any kind of product with Line 5 in the Straits, but we want to go above and beyond and make sure that's secure and safe.
All right, well, give us an update on where we are in the project. Of course, this is a one-off, one of these remarkable boring machines gets created to build this tunnel that will be 100 feet beneath the floor of the Straits of Mackinac when it gets done. And it will get done, I believe. I mean, you've continued to win and check off the boxes and get the right partners. Where are we in the project? What comes next? I know you need the sign-off from the Army Corps, but are we in place? Are you ready to move forward?
Well, that's really it. The Army Corps, then the state environmental permit. You know, we have a lot of good momentum, a lot of support for the project, around 70% support from people across the state. We have 33 counties that have passed resolutions in support of the project. And so, things are moving forward and people are really behind it, I think, because they see it as a common sense solution to Line 5 going forward in the future. I mean, it just makes sense to have this in place, enhancing safety, protecting the environment, making sure we have that energy we need, because we all know how important it is. Because you see what's going on in the world, just losing a piece of critical infrastructure. You can only imagine the impacts that would have, and that would just be unnecessary. But a lot of research has gone into it. A big piece is really all the rock and soil sampling we did several years ago now. I mean, we've been doing so much research for this project. It's been going on for 6 years. But really studying the geology of the straits, that was a big piece. In 2019, we did more than 25 core samples along the path of the tunnel, pulling rock samples out of the lake bed. We looked at that, all of that information with leading geologists, geotechnical tunnel engineers, and that really shaped what we did in designing the tunnel boring machine and in designing the tunnel and what it's going to look like. And all that core sampling, the geology told us this was a good place to build a tunnel and that these are the conditions we need. So that's just one piece that went into it, but it's been a long time now and there's been a lot, but that was a key piece. And all that information has been reviewed by the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority, all the permitting agencies, the companies we hired. They're familiar with these different types of rocks and the geology there, so they know how to do it safely. So we have solid information on the geology, and then on top of that, the boring machine is built to give feedback on the geology as it goes there through while it's doing the drilling for the tunnel.
And the education is cumulative, right? I mean, okay, it's been since 2019. It has not gone as quickly as Enbridge would like or you would like, but you accumulate this knowledge, it doesn't go away. So that's all, I guess, an investment in knowing what to do in the future. Ryan Duffy, got to leave it right there. Thank you for the very comprehensive update.
Okay, anytime. Thanks.
Greatly appreciate it. There you go. I mean, they learn about the geology. They learn about the permitting. Look, tunnels and pipelines are the safest way to move energy. So there's something to be learned from this, and they'll be passing that along. Don't you worry. We'll take a break, Ivy, after the break. All right, so about the name, image, and likeness in college sports, I'm just going to start there today. Michigan wins the national championship in basketball today. The transfer portal is open, and the people are going crazy. Dusty May, the coach of the University of Michigan, says it makes no difference because as soon as a team gets knocked out of March Madness, loses a game of the tournament, they start getting text messages and so forth. It might not have officially opened until today, but these kids are just commodities now. I don't know what I think about all this. Ivy's with me now. She doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about sports, but does enjoy watching it from time to time. Ivy, good morning.
Hello. Yes, I do love sports. I'm not really like, I need to know every stat or watch every game, but I do love watching March Madness. I love college football. I love NFL.
You love college softball.
I love college softball. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, thinking about what you just said there, when my niece was getting recruited, you do get calls and you get, there is a time frame in which you have to wait to get calls.
There's a window.
There are ways that college recruiters get a hold of you, or, but I think it's unfortunate, all this big money that is being tossed around in the portal, and I think it hurts women's sports.
It does hurt women's sports greatly. Yeah. People don't realize because
all the money goes to
football and basketball, right? Exactly. Men's football and men's basketball, all the money goes there. So we know our niece who's playing college softball.
Right.
Their travel budget was slashed because there isn't any money for it. Right. And so if it's impacting, and that's a team that's performing very well.
Exactly.
What about lesser girls teams on smaller campuses? Are they just getting pinched out altogether? I mean, that's what it seems to be happening.
Yeah.
So at some point we need to take a deep dive into what NIL does to everything else in college sports.
Sure. And I think there does need to be some regulations, cap it in terms of how much money a player can make, and make sure that, the funds are being distributed amongst all the sports.
Well, and here's something else, as we were just talking about. So the transfer portal for college basketball, it did open during the tournament the last couple of years. Now they moved it to the 7th of April today.
Okay.
So you can't have kids skipping off a team, mid-tournament. But the fact of the matter is they're already texting back and forth. They make posts on social media. Hey, I'm going to jump in the portal. No restriction on that.
Right. But hey, go blue.
Yeah,
I didn't think UConn was actually going to give them as much of a run for their money as they did.
I did.
You did.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. I kind of decided at halftime I was going to go to bed, but
did you make it to halftime?
I did.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah. So, but have you? That's really great for Michigan fans. I know you're a huge Michigan fan, have been for a long time. I love watching. I'm not sure I'm a really big fan in regards to one of the other, but I like a good game.
Yeah.
So have you heard about this, Mamdani's new racial equity plan?
I just touched on it, but I don't know a lot about it.
So what he's wanting to do, so the DOJ is investigating this plan. Mamdani proposes ties the city to cost of living crisis to racial inequality, arguing the two must be addressed together.
Of course.
It lays out government-wide goals to reduce disparities in housing, healthcare, jobs, and income, especially for Black and Brown residents. A city report tied to the plan says about 62% of New Yorkers can't afford basic living expenses, and families needing roughly $40,000 more per year just to get by. Something that I find interesting, though, is that the total number of people living in poverty, according to statistics I pulled, is 2.1 to 2.2 million people. That's total numbers. And I think it's 1 in 4 New Yorkers lives in poverty in the city of New York. That's a pretty big number.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
How's that socialism working out there? Here's the quote from Mamdani of the preliminary racial equity plan. We cannot tackle systematic racial inequity without confronting the affordability crisis head on, and we cannot solve the cost of living crisis without dismantling systemic racial inequity. I mean, come on.
Well, the thing is that this is going to
bad policy has nothing. They have terrible policies. Go on.
This is going to make people more poor. His proposal. Exactly. And not only that, but the city is already tremendously in debt. So, what are you planning on just giving people $40,000?
Only if white people pay. Only if white people pay.
Right. But this is the thing we talk about in terms of equity, where everyone has equal outcomes, and it's just that just isn't the way that it works.
That's not the way it works. Equal opportunity, not equal outcomes.
Right.
Mondamini is, he's putting in blatantly racist policies. The reward and punish people based solely on skin color. That's what this is. That's why the DOJ is going to investigate.
Right.
This will lose.
Yeah, and the reality is, it's white people also live in poverty. About 14% of the white population in New York. Now that is lower than Hispanic and Black folks, but they're it's
poverty
not
doesn't
a
discriminate.
Skin color issue. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
And we have to really be careful about looking at situations, like poverty through the lens of, if it's a racial issue or not. So, anyhow, what are your thoughts on it?
I think that anytime you use race as a foundation, you're probably at odds with the United States Constitution, federal law, Supreme Court decisions, and the list goes on. It's not legal to make decisions based solely on race in this country, not to make admissions to college, not to make admissions to the restaurant, not to make admissions to who's going to get a handout from the government. All of that is illegal. It's been held up many times by the Supreme Court. It should be it should not be legal to do that. It should be illegal. And Mamdani knows that, but he needs to do something to distract against his failure. Between him and Spanberger, the governor of Virginia. Their popularity.
That's the demise of their popularity.
Yeah, that's it, because they're horrible.
Yeah.
Anyhow, got to leave it there, Ivy.
All right, love you, Steve.
Love you too. Always a pleasure to have Ivy in the room, as you guys tend to tell me. You tell me I'm fortunate. You have no idea, but you're exactly right. Again, final thoughts after this. Now, I may not have been in bed very long last night, but I was well rested for the short time I was there. I used to think a mattress was just furniture until I got my ghost bed. Honestly, the first night I slept on it, I woke up thinking, man, this is great. That's what it's supposed to feel like. Ghost Bed doesn't build mattresses. They build furniture that are actually engineered sleep systems. Their beds are serious health equipment, designed for relief and recovery, not looks. Your body should heal when you sleep. That's the deal. Not fight for comfort. If you're waking up stiff, tossing and turning, sleeping hot, even reaching for a pain med before you go to bed, that's not aging. That could be your mattress just beating you up. Here's another thing I love about Ghost Bed. You get 101 nights to try it for free at home. Well, not for free. You get to try it. If you don't like it, you send it back, and then you're on your way. If you don't feel the difference, you can send it back risk-free. Ghost Bed offering my audience the lowest price of the season, plus an extra 10% off. Go to ghostbed.com. Promo code's Gruber. Ghostbed.com. Promo code Gruber. You can try that bed for 101 days. If you don't like it, ship it back. No obligation. Deadliest catch. How long does it take to die of hypothermia if you go off your boat in the Sea of Alaska, basically? Near Dutch Harbor. Well, 10 minutes, apparently. Deadliest catch, the TV show at Deckhand. Todd Meadows went overboard February 25th in the Bering Sea. He was in the water less than 10 minutes. He was completely unresponsive when they got him out. He drowned, but it was hypothermia. Less than 10 minutes. Yeah. The Aleutian Lady was about 170 miles north of Dutch Harbor when Meadows went overboard. This, according to TMZ. That's all it takes, 10 minutes, if you survive that long. That's what I think it's like 5. If you don't have a survival suit on, you don't survive. Crazy story. Anyhow, fight the good fight. Keep the faith. God bless America. I'm Steve Gruber. This is the Steve Gruber Show. And remember, only you can save America.